Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is present, everyone. Welcome back to SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. We are here to talk a little bit about Shelly Miscavige and David Miscavige. Over on the Blown for Good channel, Claire Headley has continued her fantastic series of interviews with people who knew Shelly Miscavige personally and worked closely with Shelly Miscavige. And this week she published an interview that she did with Hannah Eltringham Whitfield, who first met Shelly when Shelly arrived to Scientology's flagship Apollo way back in the, I guess I'm going to say the 60s. And so Hannah's familiarity with Shelly goes back. I mean, I think Shelly was like 12 years old when she arrived on the flagship and started working directly for L. Ron Hubbard. It's a fantastic interview. I had forgotten what a pleasure it is to listen to Hannah Whitfield speak and tell her stories. She is just phenomenal. It's a 1-hour interview. I listened to it earlier this week. There is a clip of this interview that I want to share with you, because she tells a story I've never heard before. And it has to do with Shelly Miscavige offering to leave David Miscavige and leave the Sea Organization in order to help take care of her own mother. Now, Shelly Miscavige's mother is a very controversial subject because Shelly Miscavige's mother, let's see, we're very early on in this video, unalived herself. And in Scientology, I can tell you, no one in Scientology knows that David Miscavige's mother-in-law reached Scientology's level of OT7 and then took her own life. I can tell you, nobody in Scientology knows that. And the story that Hannah tells in this interview comes from Hannah's firsthand knowledge, because Hannah is someone who Shelly's mother, Flo, had gone to. I'm going to say almost in desperation for help, because Shelly Miscavige's mother felt that she was not receiving the help that she needed in Scientology. And at this time, by the time this anecdote, by the time of this anecdote, Hannah and her then husband Jerry, had already left Scientology, had already been declared suppressive persons, and were among the many people who practiced Scientology, delivered Scientology auditing outside of the proper Church of Scientology. And it was considered a huge discreditable offense for anyone in Scientology to go to some of these Scientology auditors who'd already left for help. Like, that's almost like, it's like crossing a point of no return. And anyway, that's as much preamble as I think I want to give this, because I just want to play the clip for you and have you hear the story for yourself. This is only going to be a few minutes long. Every time I touch these earbuds, my computer thinks I'm trying to talk to it. Okay, here we go, guys. Just let me know in the live chat that the sound is okay once I start this.
And again, for context, at this point, it's my understanding that Shelly, Flo's daughter, was already married to David Miscavige.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was not yet the head person in charge. That was still 5 or so years off, but nonetheless, they were both senior executives. Is that correct from your recollection?
That's correct. And Flo talked about it. Thank you for bringing it up and brought the memory back. And Flo mentioned that Shelly, her daughter, was very distraught with Flo and what Flo was doing, and that Flo wasn't following orders from the church on how to resolve what was going on with her.
Yeah.
And Flo told me, but Hannah, I've tried and it didn't work. Every time I tried, it didn't work. Every time somebody from the church tried, it didn't work. That's why I'm coming outside the church. And then she said, but then Shelly gets mad at me because it's going to affect her husband, David's position in the church. I can't be connected to David if you're outside the church. and you're declared suppressive. And she said, and she was caught in this turmoil between trying to please her daughter and spare her daughter from being in bad with the head of the Church of Scientology.
Yes.
And losing her children, and then, or herself being declared and losing her children. It was a terrible, that was part of the dilemma that was going on. Apart from the other thing which Flo wanted to mention, which was this thing to do with herself, the state of awareness that she felt she had reached.
Okay, that's as far as I wanted to go on that. Actually, let me jump back over to that view real quick, just on the off chance that some of you aren't already familiar with this channel. I'm talking about Blown for Good. That is Mark Headley and Claire Headley. If you're not subscribed, you definitely want to go over there and subscribe. Some people have asked me, you know, privately in emails and whatnot, why I haven't done like a dedicated standalone video about Flo, Shelly's mother. The circumstances of her death are on the surface suspicious, and I don't want to get into the details. Let's just say, God, how do you talk about this without getting into the details? I don't want to get into the details. If depending on what headlines or what articles you read about exactly how Flo ended her existence, you would think, gee, that seems awfully suspicious. It seems more likely that somebody did that to her than that she could have done it to herself. And of course, that feeds into conspiracy theories that David Miscavige, with or without the cooperation of his wife, Shelly, proactively took steps to get rid of Shelly's mother. Because those conspiracy theories exist, and because those things have already been thoroughly debunked, that is why I've never chosen to do a standalone video about Flo and how she died, because to me, it would go beyond sensationalism. Because you know, we on the SPTV channels already spend enough time talking about things that really occurred, that you'll never see me contribute to conspiracy theories that only the craziest of the loonies run around there saying. There's a few. Flo isn't the only one who has died in ways, and you realize that Scientology always tries to act in suspicious and in ways like Scientology can, God, there's things I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about details. Scientology has a way of making even ordinary things seem highly, highly suspicious. Scientology's obsession and fascination with trying to keep their name out of the press and trying to keep it's weird for an organization that is obsessed with good PR. They have the worst possible PR, and they're always running around trying to put out fires, and their efforts to put out fires creates worse PR situations than if they had just left everything alone. And that is an example of, and I'm speaking in generalities here, but that's an example of how Scientology has taken what would be non-suspicious deaths, and by meddling in them to try and protect the image of Scientology in ways that weren't necessary, they end up making the death look suspicious. Flo Barnett is one of those things. And so that's why I've never spoken about it. Now, don't get me wrong. This interview with Hannah Eltringham is not all about Shelly's mom. It's mostly all about Shelly. There's only a small bit of it about Shelly's mom. But I can tell you this. One of the reasons I wanted to highlight this clip is because Scientologists who are still stuck in the bubble, their access to information is so restricted. And I'm not just talking about like internet filters. Like Scientology has a system of that causes its members to self-restrict their access to information. Like, let's say you're a Scientologist and you finished OT3 6 months ago and you're coming back for OT4. You're not allowed to start on OT4 without getting a very thorough interview and interrogation on the e-meter, where you're going to be asked questions like, have you read anything about Scientology on the internet? Have you looked up or searched for anything about Scientology on the internet? Have you seen any N theta? That's a Scientology word for basically bad news. Interpolated theta is what it stands for. And eventually, as a Scientologist, this happens enough times and you realize, if I actively seek information that Scientology wouldn't want me to know, or if I even keep listening, let's say you're not even actively seeking it. You encounter information and you realize it's negative, but you keep listening. You realize that if you do these things, it's just going to cost you more and more money, more money, more money, more money, more time, more money, more time away from work, more money. And so members self-restrict information. So the very idea that the leader's mother-in-law had what I'm going to call a psychotic break after having achieved the level of OT7, was completely unable to get the help that she needed in Scientology, had to seek help from outside, from known declared suppressive persons, evil people in the eyes of Scientology, and eventually decided that she would rather cease existing than to continue to live with the emotional and psychic pain she was experiencing as a result of, or possibly a result of, all the Scientology auditing that she did. This is something that if I were still in Scientology and I was allowed to receive that information and I had the freedom of mind to like percolate on it for a little bit, to like digest it, absorb it, try to come to terms with what this means, to try to come to terms with how many dozens, if not hundreds of other people have had similar fates, but that information is, kept from Scientologists. Totally aside from the fact that Shelly actually offered to leave her husband and leave the Sea organization to take care of her mother, and yet her mother felt that allowing her daughter to do that would be an even more destructive act than just leaving Scientology herself. Guys, when we talk about Scientology destroying families and destroying lives, I think it's incredibly noteworthy to point out that this even applies to the family and the lives at the very, very top of Scientology. Even David Miscavige's family and his wife's family has been decimated by the cult of Scientology. David Miscavige's brother has left Scientology. His father left Scientology. His nieces and nephews left Scientology. His mother-in-law left Scientology. His sister was arrested for selling drugs. And his twin sister, by the way. Did you guys know David Miscavige had an well, they can't be identical. Did you guys know David Miscavige had a twin sister? So anyway, I just wanted to at least highlight this fact, even though I'm not going to do a standalone dedicated video, just dedicated to Flow. And I guess also as an opportunity to continue to promote the interview series that Claire has been doing with people on this subject. It's really, really fascinating. I mean, almost just as fascinating was Mark interviewing Claire about her experiences with Shelly. And you know what the funniest thing is, when you see like someone like a Mark and a Claire interviewing each other, is they're learning things, they're hearing things for the first time that they've never heard from each other before. They've never discussed these things before. This happens like even when me and Claire and Mark and Mike were every week doing videos together, you'd always hear us, well, particularly because Mark and Mike and Claire worked together at the international base for decades. And yet, they would be telling stories to each other and they're hearing these things for the very first time. Anyway, it makes it a lot of fun. So let's see, it is 10 to 6. I think I have another video I'm going to do before 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, Claire and Amy go live with their weekly show. So we'll see if I can fit something in before then. That's all I got on this for now, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thanks to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.